Hello and welcome to the From Stands To Sidelines podcast, a podcast by coaches for coaches. Here we will discuss a range of topics from the sporting world, analysing the side that most people don't see, and hearing from some guests in the industry along the way. I'm going to hand over to the boys now. Please introduce yourselves.
So I'm Carl, and I've been coaching for about 3 years now. And the reason for coaching is because I want to help people progress in life, so help them develop their personal skills in the way they are to build them to be great people, but also to build them to be great footballers. And I'll pass on to Luke.
Yeah, I've been coaching for 8 years now, so a while. I pretty much got into coaching because, like a lot of people, my brother needed a coach for his team, otherwise he couldn't play. So I put my hand up and I've been coaching ever since. How about you, Matt?
I've been coaching about 2 years, and the reason is because when I found out I wasn't good enough as a player, I just threw everything at the wall and coaching stuck to it, really. Keen?
Yeah, no, I've been coaching for 5 years now. Started when I was 15, just sort of fell into it at my local grassroots club I was playing from at the time. Just got involved in a little bit of voluntary coaching, and I just loved it from there. I was playing semi-professional football and got an injury and just fell into it even more, to be fair. So, and yeah, since I haven't looked back.
Semi-pro footballer.
Yeah, but it's a different type, isn't it? It's not the same as everyone. Like, I thought I'd mention it because it's fine saying, "Oh, you fell into it," but like, if there's a reason, you got to say that reason. Do you know what I mean?
Go on, James. Last one.
That was the football pitch and was like, here we go.
All right. I'm James, and I've been coaching for about 5 years now. I started doing it as a volunteer for my DV, and I've loved it ever since. I was 14 when I started. I started coaching at the grassroots club, and I don't think I've missed a day since 5 years ago. Just as a little bit of a background, just a bit of an introduction to us as well. All of us are current UCFB students at Wembley, and we're studying football coaching and management. So we will make some reference to that throughout. And another thing to note is that we are currently a day after the Euro semi-final that England won, so we might make a fair few references to that. So every week we're going to discuss an overarching question or a theme, a particular theme, and that's going to centre our debate. We might have some guests on to talk about their perspective on the question. Today's question, to start us off nicely, is something I'm sure most of you can relate to, which is grassroots football. And our question today is, how does grassroots football impact player development pathways? Take it away, boys.
To be fair, as coaches, so like, even not just as players, but as coaches, grassroots is just a great place to start for just anyone in football. Because like we all say, we've all coached, and I imagine we all coached straight away from grassroots. As a player, you won't go straight into some development or anything. You will start at grassroots, and it's just such a great pinnacle of sport. And you don't even, it's not even a case of, here we go, I'm fantastic at football, I'm going to join. It's that, no, I enjoy football, and like I joined when I was 12, so I didn't even join from the start. I did a trial just because all my friends were in this team, and I did a trial and got in, and that was it from there. It wasn't even a case of, I'm going to start from like sevens, like mini kickers you get, go on from there. So yeah, it's just grassroots is a great place, like a starting place, and it's just a focus on like enjoyment and just like social side, basically.
Yeah. I mean, most of my players I coach, well, there's a couple of them that want to obviously go on to academies and stuff like that, but most of them just want to play for fun. So I think as coaches, that's what you need to stick to. You need to remember to be able, the kids are there, especially my age, going into under 15s now. They're there for fun, really. 99% of them are there for fun. You might have the odd one or two that want to progress higher, but most of them just want to be there, have a kick around with their mates on a Sunday, win a couple games and go home.
To be fair, like the nice thing about it is that like even for us as coaches, so if we flip it on its head, like making it not about us, but having it from the perspective of like we can almost enjoy what we do at a level that isn't pressurized. That all grassroots football, it's all voluntary. We don't have to worry about that our necks are on the line for a job. We don't really even have to worry about results at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, the kids are there to play football, as long as they have a safe and enjoyable time. But it also gives us a chance to develop. I think most jobs, it requires you to go get high level qualifications, go and do this, go and do that. Whereas grassroots football, you have everyone from different walks of life. And it's such a brilliant thing where I can say it personally since starting, I feel like I've developed as a coach. Don't get me wrong, not the finished article. And I've probably only moved from about there to there, which is a tiny amount. But when you think of it in the grand scheme of it, as all of us as aspiring coaches and want to go further on into the game, and hopefully make it a career for the entirety of our lifetime, it can be one of those ones that which you can develop, but it's also nice with the players that you got because you can help develop them along the way.
I think at the end of the day, it's a learning experience for everyone. You look at it from a player's perspective. I think regardless of whether you go on to make it at a really high level or not, it's something that you always look back on as something that's shaped you as a person or shaped you as a footballer, or whether it's shaping you into a certain character as a coach or as a referee or anything like that. But you've seen it with the Euros. How many teams have done the team photo with their local grassroots shirt on? I think that shows really the importance of the pathways that they've been given, and I think it tells you a lot about the experiences that they had at grassroots football when they were younger. To be able to look back on that with fond memories while performing at the highest level.
Was it like Jude? Jude said that his coach always used to just keep him smiling, and that he knew that was it. And it's amazing that, and I know Jude's not like the oldest player on that pitch for England at the moment, but the fact he still recalls that time in his grassroots club and his coach shows you the impact, regardless of whether he was where he is now, or if he just went to like a semi-professional or whatever team, he would always have that in his head. And I think that's a really like strong thing, and it's something that we forget, is that all the experiences you give them at grassroots, they'll remember it forever. So if you are giving them equal game time, if you are supporting them all the time and not screaming and shouting when you're on the side of a football pitch at grassroots, I think like that is remembered.
Yeah, and I mean, what you just said there about playing, keep them smiling, I think that's what a lot of coaches lose in the thick of things when it's come to the winter games and every game's getting called off, and then February time you're playing every Sunday and you're just like, oh, results. And I know like last year, because it's my first year coaching grassroots last year it was kind of like forgetting to keep it fun at times. It was kind of like you're getting so sucked into all the parents saying one thing and you're trying to do something else, and you just forget to go, oh, you know what, this is just a little bit of fun.
I think that's the key difference, isn't it, between an academy setting and a grassroots setting. When we talk about the player development pathways, well, it's important to know that no two players are ever going to have the same pathway. We see that we talk about the England squad. So many of those players that have gone through the England setup have come from different backgrounds. You've got players that have come from non-league like Jamie Vardy and Ollie Watkins, who's obviously just scored that superb goal in the semi-final. And then you got players that have come through academies since they were sort of 4, 5, 6 years old, players like your Declan Rices. And I think it's really important to sort of make the distinction between the academy setting is very elitist, it's very about results, it's very data driven, it's very professional. And then the grassroots is about understanding that, well, yeah, we can learn, but we can have fun, and that's how we're going to learn best. Because sometimes, you've got to remember they are just kids. At the end of the day, a lot of them, they just want to have fun because you've got to
Thing is,
develop a love for football.
yeah. Thing is as well though, like you consider though the lessons you get from grassroots are actually really important in the professional game. So you take England at the Euros, for example. That pitch they played on, was it against Denmark? Where it was
Yeah,
just
The
Yeah, the
really
one at
hard.
Shelter
Yeah.
Stadium.
think how many decent pitches you play on as a grassroots player. How many decent pitches did you
Not
ever
many.
play? I've played on pitches that are like sand.
that's the thing. You turn up on a Sunday morning or a Sunday afternoon, and your players are instantly going, "Oh, what is this? Like, what is this pitch? Like,
It's
whether
almost a
it's
mental test.
sludge, whether it's sandy, whether there's like patches everywhere. You can't. There is no better place for development, in my opinion, than playing on these types of pitches.
Yeah, because if you can do it on them, to be fair, you can when you're playing at Wembley and you look at the pitch, when you think back to grassroots like Bellingham, playing all these sand pitches, all long grass, wonky goals.
Yeah.
Then you step out of Wembley and go, oh, this is easy. I can zip a
Goal
pass.
different size to the other goal.
Yeah.
Exactly, but you're right. The lessons, Luke, are very transferable, and I think grassroots is where you get to experience everything because it's such a crazy environment. It's such a, it's a very free for all that I think you do get to experience a lot of different things, and I think that's so important in a player's development. Not only their technical development, like we mentioned with playing on worse pitches, things like that, but also their mental development, things like understanding different versions of the game, understanding different ways people play, because you don't always get pretty football at grassroots. Sometimes you get, your rough play, your violence, your lump it up to the man up top sort of football. And I think it's important that you get used to all that, and mentally you understand the game in a whole different way. You get a new dimension on it. And like you say, look, those lessons are transferable from the bottom to the top. And I think a lot of players appreciate that. And you hear them all the time, the top players in their interviews, praising their experience at grassroots. And that's why I think as coaches, we have such a high responsibility to make it a great environment. And I'm not saying we've got to make it elite. I'm not saying it's got to be planned meticulously to the nth degree, but I'm saying it's got to be following the ethos of grassroots, which is fun and inclusion and making sure people just have a good time.
I think it links in like so well. Like if you look at it from more of a broader picture, when you think about society and the way it is, with obviously there's a lot of things going on with like mental health at the moment, and we're also through cost of living, like that is having an impact. But actually, because of us providing that football, that could mean that, I don't know, let's say for example, if a parent can't make it there, that they, instead of actually having to pay their subs, they can almost coach and actually help out that way. That helps the club. But also, like, you look at, we go back to the whole thing about the pitches. It's almost like for every kid, every game is a challenge, but it's a challenge they enjoy. But when you look at the whole mental health aspect of it, I know that I was a player that suffered with mental health, and I've coached players that do suffer with mental health, and I've also coached them that their mental health is okay. But it's that challenges, is that you give them that challenge, and it's like, no matter what they do, if that environment's right, they feel like they've achieved something. And that links perfectly into your point, James, that a lot of it is environment. Because I guarantee if the right environment is there, then you can go on and do good things and actually achieve something, which doesn't mean going out and winning Barks and Bucks FA trophy or something like that. But it could be something as small as just getting up and getting out of the house to play some football. I know 100%. For a lot of kids, that is their highlight of their week.
It is what you make it at the end of the day. Like as the coach, you've got to go in, you've got to make that culture within the group one that drives for development, drives for enjoyment. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to get the development without enjoyment. It doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come by itself. Like there's lots of other aspects that are involved. And a little bit off the point, I'd like to praise the FA for the work that they've done in in grassroots football, and the funding that they offer to different clubs and stuff like that. Because what they've done for certain clubs over the last few years, where they've been able to, get these grants, sort their pitches out, build a clubhouse, stuff like that, it really makes for enjoyment for the kids, which aids that development at that certain club. I know when I started in grassroots football, I started with a club that were training around the back of a school. The grass was really long, no clubhouse. It was there, train, home. That was it. And then it developed. A couple of years later, I'm going to the club. I'm staying down there all weekend. I was there training Saturday morning. I'd leave at 2 o'clock to go watch football, and then I'd be back down there Sunday morning. My game weren't till 2 o'clock. I'd be down there from 9 a.m. till about 7 o'clock at night, just because I love being in and around that environment with, your friends that stay afterwards and stuff like that. And, at the end of the day, that's massive in development.
It's huge, isn't it? And it's not just your development as a footballer, but as a person. And I think that's why, like, socially, we need grassroots. It's such a huge vehicle for positive change and just for positivity in general. And I think you mentioned the FA. I think another body I would like to mention is the Football Foundation, because the amount of pitches, 3G pitches in particular, that they have installed across this country is absolutely amazing, because we all know the struggle. Living in England, most of your games get rained off throughout the winter months, but with a 3G pitch, it just facilitates that opportunity for children. And parents are paying their money. They should be allowed to play football, and the weather shouldn't be a barrier to that. So the Football Foundation have put a 3G pitch in where I live locally, and it's absolutely transformed the way we train and play, not just matches, but training. If you train on grass throughout the week, you can't be messing up your pitches for a Sunday morning. So many things used to get cancelled, and now it's huge. Just to have one 3G pitch, it serves so many people and so many benefits. And I just want to sort of go back to Carl, what you said about parents not necessarily having to pay a lot of money because of the cost of living and things like that. Well, this is why grassroots is so important, because we've seen so many grassroots players, or players who started at grassroots, go on to achieve such wonderful things at the professional level and at international level. How many of those would we miss because their parents can't afford to send them to an academy and things like that? How many of those players would we miss if we didn't have a grassroots system in this country like we do? You look at America, the football there, I mean, it costs thousands of pounds to play grassroots football over there. So the quality of football over there is not as good, because they are missing so many great players because it's inaccessible. But here, it's a couple of £100 at most. I'd like to think at grassroots around here, it's accessible. People can get involved, and no matter what their background is, their socio-economic background isn't important, and it doesn't determine how good you are as a footballer. A lot of our best footballers have grown up playing football in cages within London. A lot of our internationals grew up there, and they wouldn't have been the wealthiest, and they wouldn't have necessarily been able to pay to go to development centres or to go to academies and to cover the costs and various costs associated. But grassroots being accessible, being cheap, and being on your doorstep is such an important thing to sort of get as many people with that net as you can, because the more people we have involved, the more superstars we're going to find. And I think without that, we certainly wouldn't have that one star above our badge at England.
Going back on the on the mentality thing, because last season my team, we played top of the top division. That they were like JPL level, but not quite there. But they had players playing Saturday, Sunday, training through the week. And I think, like my team, we were 2-3 divisions below them in some cases. But to playing teams like that, just mentally, like it's like an FA Cup game. It's like Wickham playing United. Kind of that thing of, right, we know we're going to be under it here, but just go out. Because I know some players we had. My team, we're very lucky. We have players. We could be 10-0 down. We'll still be running. But I know some teams I used to play for when I was younger, we used to go 3-0 down, 4-0 down against a team divisions above us that realistically we shouldn't be playing, and we're just going, we've had enough here. We just kind of give up. But I think mentality wise, just playing that team three levels above you, even if you lose 10-0, develops you massively than battering a team 3 leagues below you 10-0.
It's character, isn't it? You build character, and that's character for life, and it doesn't just stick to football. It transcends football.
Yeah,
100%.
I think one of the things I look back on, right, is I took over my under-13s team back in January, right? It was a team that was falling apart. I'd inquired about taking a team over or taking over a team for next season. He got in contact with me and was like, look, we've got a team that's going to be folding unless they get a new coach in now to come and manage it. So I took that role straight away without question, without even sort of thinking about it. Got straight into it. And our last game of the season, right, it was sort of building up to this point. It was falling apart. There was a lot of players that had left, and we were just about getting 11 players each week. Some weeks we were playing with 10. We played with 9 players on Thursday night, right, at St Paul's Ground, which is in southeast London, right. We were playing in the Shield game. We couldn't get through to the final of the Shield. It works in groups. The top 2 play each other in a final. They were top. They were already in the final, basically. You know, we've had to go there and play them with 9 men. You know, no subs. They're sitting there with 11 players and, you know, 3 subs on the bench. And, you know, it's driving that mentality into them that's gonna make them flourish in the moment. And, you know, one of the key messages that I gave out on that day was that, you know, if you go out and you try hard, you work for each other, right, and you just do the right things, you're going to come off that pitch holding your heads high with a result, and you're going to look back on that in 10, 20 years' time as one of your favourite memories in football, because it's not often you play 9 players against 11. You know, they were an under-12s team playing under 13s football. So we was a year younger than all the other teams as well. You know, and we ended up coming away with a 3-3 draw. You know, because what you do is you have to drive that mentality into them. Yes, it comes from within them, but you also have to play your part in driving that into them as well. And I think that links to probably something we'll talk about in another episode in coach behaviours and stuff like that. But, you know, like we've said, it all goes hand in hand. But yeah, like Matt said, it's so important.
Yeah, we played a team last season. I won't say their name, but you boys know about this. It got abandoned in the end, whatever. But they started with 10 players, but then their manager because it was a massive club, on the phone, their top division teams just played a game, and they're all coming down here. He's on the phone. Oh right, when's he coming down? 5 players turn up, 3 players come off and sit there the whole game, coats on. So I've gone up to them. Oh yeah, realistic. Why is he bringing everyone down? Oh, he does this every week. I just find that if they had game time, you don't know what they could turn in. They could be the best player on your team with 100%. Games, because every week they bring down 5 players again. The same kids come off every week. They said it's always them 3, 4, and then they play 10 minutes, come off, and that's it. I think that's just. I mean, talking about player development, we'll probably link back to coach behaviour again, like Kane said, and another thing, which will come back to this. But in terms of developing a player there, and then 1, they're not having fun, which is probably the main thing in grassroots, and 2, they're not developing, and they could have the same thing as all of us, wanting to be that Premier League Bukayo Saka, Jude Bellingham, Kane, stepping out on that pitch for England. They're at this club where they come off every week, not enjoying themselves, and it's just times like that where you're like this player could be a good player. You've never seen them play realistically, so I just think stuff like that is just wrong, pretty much. But
I think it was one of my FA courses where one of the coaches there, it was brilliant. He really knew his stuff, and he just said, like, at younger age groups, he said, just get them all playing.
Yeah.
Like, just focus on that technical side. Just get them all playing. Give them equal game time. Don't just use your best players, because if you work on every single one of them players and get them built technically, and a point in the leagues and in according with the FA, it's not competitive. So it doesn't actually matter. You know, wins don't go down, anything. It's just a group and you play like almost friendly matches. He said, if you just develop those players, each individual players technically, across that time, you will end up with a group of players by the time you want to be competitive. And like, it does get competitive at, is it 12s or 13s? I think.
Yeah.
Around
It
there,
typically gets published.
Yeah, and at that point, you will have a fantastic group that are all just as good as each other, potentially. I'm not, you know, there's different types of players that might struggle, might be, you know, might excel. But at that point, you will have a great group who can play. Whereas if you focus on the players that are really, really good at the start and don't take them off and make them, you know, get them playing, and if you're losing by a few goals, you send your player who scores goals for fun on and he gets everything, but you took off the other kid that has barely played, you know. But if you get everyone, then you have a group. Whereas if you do individuals, you'll end up doing the same thing throughout the entire coaching journey. You will always be, and the players that you've been putting on and giving more time to will learn and get better within the game. And I think nothing, to be honest, the biggest quote that hit me hard and in recognition of that, and I apologise if I completely butcher it, but I think it was, and you boys probably remember this, I think it was one of the lectures, and it was saying, when you learn to swim, they don't keep you out of the pool to like learn to swim. You can only learn to swim when you're in the water. And I just saw that and I read that. And like I said, I probably butchered it, but it's the rough idea, is that if you don't put them in those game scenarios, are you teaching them football?
yeah.
Like if you're just doing the training and not putting them in the games.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I do with my players more recently, more futsal related, but before it was kind of, I realised what I was like between like Christmas and, well, just a few weeks ago, I was kind of practice, now do them three in a match. Whereas now, or going in, well, the last few weeks and going into next year, I'm just doing a rival and practice for 20 minutes or until they get it, and then do it in a match. Because I always say it to my players, but I've only been taking it into account recently, is you can do it in a practice well, but if you can't do it in a match, what are we learning for? Like, if
Have you really learned?
Yeah, because if we can go in a practice 2v2 whatever and go, right, we can do this, this, and this, and then in a match they're just dribbling and completely forgetting it. We've just spent an hour doing nothing pretty much.
Well, I suppose it depends on how you scaffold it, though.
Yeah, but I think well, on a more personal note, it'll be next season more match time rather than practice, because every kid loves matches, so that's fun. And if you can't do it in a match, what are we learning for? Because it comes to match day, it doesn't matter what I've done in my 1v1 mini game. It matters what we've done in that 11v11 or futsal 5v5 match, really.
I think one point to that is, I think nowadays, obviously for all UCFB students, we have to do a lot around like pedagogy and also looking at like unorganised football compared to organised football. Now, grassroots is becoming very organised. Going back to Matty's point, is that it's such a big thing if we have small-sided games, because you can almost make that your unorganised football within an organised environment, in the sense of everyone knows what the game is. I've got 2 goals, you've got to score in either one, you get a point if you score. But the thing is with the game, if you give kids the freedom, or just anyone in general, like we all enjoy kickabouts with our mates and so on and so forth, but like just that time for unorganised. Sometimes the best football is played unorganised, in the sense of there isn't a ref, there isn't a certain thing you got to do. Like sometimes just letting it flow and just playing games works best. But I also partially disagree with letting them play loads of games, because there is a time and a place for scaffolding stuff, that especially with the technical side, but I think that should come later on down the line, and more emphasis on the technical part, the older and older they get, but never losing that idea of maximising small-sided games. I think are a brilliant way of doing it. Doesn't always need to be 11v11 or the normal format prescribed for that age group, but I think small-sided games, because effectively you will see that in a game in some way, shape, or form.
Let's discuss that as a talking point then. So if we're talking about a greater emphasis at grassroots on coach education, and you go online now, you search up session plans for grassroots and you see all these flashy ideas and cones and this, that and the other, and you see all these wonderful ideas, and it's very structured. And as a coach, I think you feel pressure. I know certainly when I started, before I started the degree, I think I felt a lot of pressure to always be doing something, and you feel like you have to be saying something technical and doing something technical. So with that emphasis on coach education and trying to be the best of the best, and everyone trying to turn into academy, do we potentially lose that? We refer to it as a non-linear pedagogy. So like the street games element of it, do we lose that lack of structure that is so important to grassroots? Maybe is that something you boys think maybe is caused by a greater emphasis on this tactical mindedness? Everyone wants to be Pep Guardiola on the touchline.
That's what I was about to.
I think you've got to have an element of that, because you have to have an element of game understanding, of tactical understanding and stuff like that. If you're not taught that sort of thing, you're going to go and you are a good player, you're going to go into a situation where you're going to be asked to do something, and you're going to be like, a player's going to be like, what's that? Like what am I meant to do? Because I'm not used to being in them scenarios. I think it's good to create them scenarios in certain moments. So you might work on certain tactical elements of the game each week, but not necessarily enforcing it as in something you have to do. I think it's recognizing when you've got to use it. But the thing is, if you're constantly telling them when they've got to do certain things, it becomes too structured, like you say, and it can become confusing when you haven't got someone there that's telling you got to do this, you've got to do that, and whatever. Like you say, you can get lost in the moment or whatever. But I think with you talk about the structure and stuff of grassroots football these days, I think it's good to, like you say, have an element of structure, but you can't structure it too much, because at the end of the day, football on a game day is not a structured game. It's not a structured game. I think if you add too much of a structure, you can limit the creativity and sometimes even limit the development of players in a certain aspect.
Well, what is learning? I mean, that's the question I would ask people, is what is learning? You can develop a technique and you can understand and be able to do a technique, but have you truly learnt it as a footballer until you know when to use it in a game and how to use it in a game? I think for me, I think for me that's what learning is not the technique itself. I think learning is knowing how and when to use your skill set, your arsenal of techniques that you are prepared with and equipped with by your coaches. And I think as a coach, you give them when they're younger, particularly, I think, or when they're starting out. I shouldn't say young. When they're starting out, really, you equip them with a whole range of techniques and styles and things they can do, and they're tools in their toolbox as a player. And then I think it's your responsibility to facilitate them. And I don't think you can necessarily coach it, but I think you have to facilitate their opportunity to just get in there and learn how and when I use my toolbox. What tools do I use to get in and out of these situations? How can I make use of what I have been taught? And then I think once you know how and when to use, and you'll never truly know, and you can always get better. The best players in the world, they can still get better, because there's no limit on the amount of scenarios you're going to face in a game. There's no two times where you'll be in the exact same scenario. And I think you can always develop more and more. But I don't think you can necessarily coach that. I think you have to let them learn. And I think that's what is important. And so when you ask me what is learning, well, I would say, I think it's not the technique itself. I think that's remembering, and I think that's understanding. But learning is knowing how and when to use something within a game scenario. And I think we can all learn, whether we're first week of grassroots and I'm 7 years old, or whether I'm a professional footballer aged 40, I think you can still learn because there's so much variety. And I think that's why we all love football, and that's why it's such a varied and beautiful game. Is because it's an art and there's so many different situations. It's not the same thing over and over again. It's patterns, but in a different order. And I think that randomness to a game of football is something we can't replicate through structured practice. You can organize, you can add an element of organized chaos, but I think the actual randomness and the variety of a game of football is something that can only really be matched by playing football.
The thing that always comes to mind when you say that is the analogy: you can guide the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And that's very much like coaching. We can give players, we could give them the best technical detail ever in the world. We could be borderline Pep Guardiola and all these intricate plans, but on a match day, we can support them. You can't make decisions for them.
I think the analogy I gave the team before was this isn't FIFA. I'm not standing at the side of the pitch with a controller going, yes, pass now, dribble forwards, excuse the skill, rainbow flick, yes, shoot in the top corner,
spam the sticks.
I can't do it. It doesn't happen. So
they're not puppets. They're not puppets, yeah. And that's important. And I think you see too many people at the younger ages because that's when you can do it. So when you're playing five-a-side football and you hear people shouting their way through the game, whether it be a parent, whether it be a coach, whether it be another player, and you hear them shouting and dictating somebody else's game. Now that's great, and it might help you win games when you're at under 7 because there's 5 people on the pitch that you've got to worry about, and you can probably go for one at a time. But when you get to 11 aside, one day you can't sit and dictate 11 people's game at once. And so if they've never had that opportunity to make the decision for themselves and they don't have those decision-making skills, then they haven't learned. They're just a puppet for you. And you can't go all through your football career and just be a puppet. No player is a puppet and gets away with it at professional level. You have to have some element and some degree of, I can make this decision for myself on the pitch. And that's once again the responsibility of not only the coaches this time, but the parents as well, to say, look, you understand the game, you've got to learn, and I'm not going to sit here and shout at you. You hear it all the time. A player's through in the edge of the area and you hear, mum or dad from the sideline shouting, shoot, and things like that. And there's a great pass on instead. And you hear all this, and it frustrates me as a coach, and just as a football fan in general, and just as a human, it frustrates me. Let them play. That's what the FA say, and I think it's important. I think we would all agree with that sort of thing, and understand there's times when you can, there's times and situations where you let it get the better of you. Sometimes the occasion does get the better of you, and you see them through on goal, and you scream, shoot. But at the end of the day, you've just got to let them play, and they're going to learn for themselves. You can't be the puppet master all the time.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because it's kind of it kind of is relevant, that kind of thing. And I know it doesn't come from someone that you might know and like, not your parent, but in a stadium, when I don't know, someone like Declan Rice or whoever's got the ball on the edge of the box, what does the whole stadium shout?
Shoot!
Exactly.
Well, but that's important, isn't it? So in the current Euros, where we've seen England and people moan, so England have liked to pass it around the back and comfortably keep possession, which I think we're all quite fond of as coaches and people who study the game. But a lot of the regular fans, I'll say regular fans, people who don't necessarily look deeper into things, get frustrated, and you hear it all the time. That's what I find it frustrating going to watch football with other people, because you hear it and they moan, and it was like, well, we're safe, we've got possession, and you hear it and we're passing it around the back. And then you hear it in the stadium, and you hear it in the pubs, you hear it in the halls, the screenings, you hear it. And everyone's going, ooh, and you hear the jeering. And then what do you see them do? Well, Jordan Pickford hoofs it up the pitch, and we lose the ball, and we lose possession, and we're no longer safe. When we've got the ball, they can't score. And I think that's like what you say there, Luke, is you hear people all the time. Everyone's got an opinion, but you've got to learn to shut out the noise. And I think I saw a statistic. It was, I think, 76 long passes Jordan Pickford had done, and we'd retained the ball about 10 times through that. Now, when we were playing the football that they designed to play, and we were playing it around the back, playing it sensibly, playing these sensible passes on the floor, we kept the ball. The retention was incredible. But if you let the noise get to you, then suddenly you don't play your game, you play somebody else's, and you can never be comfortable playing somebody else's game.
It's another lesson, isn't it, from grassroots football that's actually relevant further up. You will get people
100%.
saying, shoot, pass, do this, do that. And it's being able to confidently kind of go, no, yeah, I trust myself and this is the right thing. And I think that's something that's really important, that you obviously, you know, it's not your parent. Like a grassroots game, it's most commonly the parent going, shoot, pass it, take him on, tackle him, that kind of thing. And it's not in a stadium, but it's still almost relevant, because if you're falling under pressure of someone telling you to shoot, and you do, even though it's probably not the right thing, I think it's a good lesson that you learn from again, grassroots football.
I think for me, it's a lot of outside noise that seems to affect what players do, what coaches do and stuff like that. And it's like, like James has just said and Luke's just said, with the Euros and stuff, there's been a lot of outside noise, and you get the same with what you were saying, James, about parents saying shoot when there might be a better pass on or something like that in front of goal. And for me, it's just I think it's got to go down to, you've got to trust the players, you've got to trust the coaches a little bit more to maybe drive that development, because I think, it isn't just down to the players and the coaches to develop. They say how much of an impact that fans and the crowd have on a performance, which at the end of the day aids development. And you've seen how much things have changed since the group stage in the Euros. When everyone was complaining about passing the ball sideways and backwards and not playing front foot attacking football, sitting back deep on the edge of your own box and stuff like that. But it's got us to where we've got to. And Ali McCoist was saying on commentary last night in the second half, we seem to have taken our foot off the gas.
Yeah, it's gone dull and all of that.
We've taken off the gas. We've gone a bit dull. And we had 64% of possession in the first half, and now it's gone all sideways and backwards again. But if you think about having 64% of the ball in the first half, not all of them passes are going forwards. A lot of them is going to be sideways and backwards. A lot of them are, but because you see more opportunities, because the game plan is slightly different, the opinion of the outsiders changes dramatically.
And that's media too, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's where I think you've got to have trust in the players that are on the pitch and the coaches that are on the sideline, because at the end of the day, they're the group that are driving development from each other. You've got to be able to trust what is happening in the camp and in the group to really support what's going on.
Linking that back to grassroots again, like linking it back to the question, is that and not coming from a player's perspective, but from a coach's, how many of you have had parents come up to you and say, this person should play there, you should be doing this, why aren't you doing this, why don't you do that? And like, again, in terms not player development but coach development, you have to learn to deal with it. People, and again, I don't have millions of people coming to watch my games. I don't have millions of people's opinions.
It can be very political, though.
It's the same scenario. You've got to learn, and it's a great place in order to start learning to do that, to trust yourself and what you're trying to do. And if someone says, why don't you play this person here or play that there? And I personally don't have a problem with people challenging me, because I know why I've done something. If someone says, why aren't you playing that person in striker? Why are you playing him in defence? Well, because he needs to develop that defensive side, and in order to win the ball, it's actually really important for an attacker as well as the defender, and things like that. And I don't mind being challenged, but it's definitely something, again, that comes from that grassroots side and that development side, which is really important in the elite game.
Because at the top game, I'll take Gareth Southgate out of the question, but the Premier League, we're all fans of the Premier League, whatever. We're all watch football, but
unless you're in non-league, Matty, yeah.
I was going to get to that, because the managerial in the Premier League 6 to 8 months or something around there on average. So we're saying we have to trust the coaches and play, but do the higher ups, like the top end board members, do they trust their coaches? Because I'm telling you now, if I was up there and I fully had my trust in like James to manage my team, I wouldn't sack him after 6 months. So we're saying trust the players, but are the higher ups trusting what they've built?
Well, to be
Is
fair,
that a response to the noise from the fans, do you think,
Exactly.
potentially?
So
And that's
Chelsea
because
similar
they
issue,
treat
didn't
it
they?
like a business. They treat it like a
Yeah.
business. And if your customers are unhappy, then you change things generally. And I think that's we talk about, Luke just mentioned that the confidence in yourself. And so we sort of diverted from player pathways into sort of, as a coach, your development from grassroots and being able to be confident. So, yeah, you can challenge me, but I have my way. And if I believe in it, and I think Gareth Southgate, prime example right now. People have been going crazy saying, make your subs, your subs aren't quick enough. You haven't done them early enough. And there's sort of 3 games in a row where he's made the subs and they've made the impact. And people still don't seem to understand, just trust in him, because you hear them all the time. Make the subs earlier, make the subs. Oh, they've got to bring this person on, they've got to bring that person on. And you hear it. And Lee Dixon was on commentary and he was going on about subs. And he made the subs and we scored the goal. And then suddenly his narrative changes completely of, oh, it's fantastic. Gareth's made the subs. He's done it. And, he knows what he's doing. But people, the next game, go on about it the same thing. And it's like, well, you've just established he knows what he's doing. So trust in him. And I think Roy Keane put it really, really well. It's tournament football. It's knockout football. We got through to the final. And last night he said, do you think anyone cares how they got there?
Exactly.
No, you're in the final, and it doesn't always have to look pretty. And that is, once again, something that comes from the top to the bottom, right to grassroots. And you go, well, development of players might not always look pretty. It might not always be the tiki-taka football you want to see. It might not be a Pep Guardiola tactics. You know what I mean? Exactly. And progress is not linear. It won't look the same for every single player, and it won't look pretty. But no one cares how you got there as long as you did. And if they have fun and they're sticking at it, because that's the most important thing. No one gets where they are without consistency and without consistently wanting to improve and striving to improve and just being around the place. If players don't love football, if they don't love their grassroots football, if you're making that a miserable experience, they won't want to come back. And if they're not there, they're not going to learn, they're not going to develop. So when we talk about how does the grassroots football impact the player development pathways, well, as a coach, as leaders of grassroots, you have to make it an enjoyable experience so they keep coming back. All we've got to do when they're young is develop a love for football, because as long as they keep coming back, they will get better just by playing football. It's not a hard equation. Sometimes you've just got to be there. And I think some coaches in this country at grassroots are an absolute, and like, they're just superb. And you go around sometimes when I ref, when I coach, even if you just go to watch grassroots football, and that's youth and adults, and you just see they make it such a great experience for everyone, for every single person, not just their own team, not just the players. It might be the parents, it might be friends and family, it might be the referee, it might be the other team, whoever it is, it might be the other coaches. But some people are such a fantastic example of just making it an enjoyable environment, and that reflects in the development. And it reflects in the development not only as footballers, but as people. And for me, with my grassroots team, they're an under-10 side now. And I've always said to them, and I've said to their parents, and I've said to everybody else, first and foremost, I'm going to make you good people. Then we'll worry about the football. And if you are good people, that's what grassroots is there for. At the end of the day, most players aren't going to go on to be professionals. They're not going to go on to play for England. That's the reality. It's harsh, but it's true. So at grassroots, your focus has to be, we're having fun, we're creating good people, supportive people, and you might not develop all your techniques as a footballer, but you might develop as a leader. I've known players who didn't necessarily develop as a footballer technically. They're not going to go and rainbow flick it over 3 players' heads and go bang one in the goal, but they develop so many different skills and a variety they develop teamwork, they develop leadership, and they've gone on in their working lives and found something they are good at technically. And those life skills, they transcend football. They go throughout and they will be with you for life. So what you learn at that grassroots stage will carry you forward. And I think that is why it's super important for people to remember why you started. Why did you start? And if you were a player once, why did you play? And I think for me, mini kickers, I run a mini kickers thing for lots of younger players who aren't team age yet. So they're 4, 5 and 6, year R1. And for me, that's my favourite opportunity to remember why I started coaching and why I like football, because it's all about fun. We play games all the time. We play matches. We just make it fun. We've got silly themes, things like that. And at the end of the day, it's coaching. Underneath it all, it's coaching. But you just remember, why do I do this? Why do I do grassroots? It's to put smiles on the faces of people like them, smiles on the faces of their parents, and they keep coming back and they're having the best time and you're getting the best reviews. People love it because they're just having fun. And I think if we remember that, and you've got to be quite open-minded as a grassroots coach, and we mentioned it quite a lot earlier today in the episode, where sometimes people focus on the best player at under 7, and they're probably not going to be your best player by the time you get to under 18. But if you aren't open-minded and if you don't think long-term and you don't try and build up that standard across the whole group by giving people equal opportunity, then you miss out on a lot. You miss out on potentially professional players, but you miss out on potentially your best grassroots players. And of course, we all want to win, 100%. But if you sometimes focusing on winning actually has the opposite effect, and you know it's development football when you're younger age groups. You don't care whether you win, lose, or draw. A win at a younger age group should be 1, everyone smiled, 2, everyone's safe, and 3, everyone got better because they had that time. And for me, that's my criteria for a win at development age football. When you get older, if you've met those wins as a younger age group, the technical wins, the wins on the pitch, will fall into place so easily. And I think that's what we've discussed today overall, is that grassroots football is such a huge driver of player development onto professional level, onto semi-professional level, even just recreational players. But it's not just as a footballer you develop, it's as a human being as well. It's the psychology, it's the mentality, and it's those life skills that will be with you forever. They will carry you through your life, through your working life, through your career. And I think that is what we've established today, is that it's so important to not lose the essence of grassroots, which is fun, freedom, a little bit bonkers sometimes, but it's just about remembering where you are, what you're doing, and the importance in your role. And if you remember your role in the bigger picture, then I think we're on to a winner as a nation and as a sport and as the FA as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like you say, there's not going to be a fixed answer on any of these questions that we look to discuss throughout the episodes and whatnot. But you know, there's loads of different opinions. There's so many. We've all given our different opinions throughout the episode, and you know, none of them are necessarily right to each other. None of them are necessarily wrong to each other. We all do it in different ways. But yeah, no. Before we finish up, here's a question for you boys. Your top 3 priorities for player development pathways within grassroots football. So that could be like fun and enjoyment, consistency, stuff like that. What would be your top 3?
Who's going first, then, boys?
Question.
I mean, I'm quite happy to start. Unless Keane, have you got an answer? Have you got an answer ready?
I've got 2 of my 3. I've got 2 of my.
Then hit us with your 2.
Let's say Keane's for last. He's asked the question.
Yeah, Keane.
Okay.
James has already kind of said his.
Yeah, go on.
All right. Well, I'm quite happy to sort of lead on this one and start and say, for me, I think there's a couple of things. One is a non-negotiable. It's fun. It's fun and enjoyment, because that is what breeds the love of the game and what keeps you coming back week after week. So fun is the top priority. For me, one of the most important things is support. Now, that is not just support from me as your coach. It's not just support from your parents, but it's support from within that team. And so my culture that I love to create if I go into a grassroots team, and this is any team, it's not just grassroots and it's not just football, but I think it's support amongst each other where you feel fearless. Now, if you are acting with fear, you'll never learn, you'll never blossom into what you can be. So for me, I think a supportive culture where a player is not afraid to try something and get it wrong because their teammates will pick them up. They're not going to berate them, but they're going to pick them up. That's one of my most important factors. And I think that sort of breeds a safety. You feel safe. And I think not saying you don't step out of your comfort zone, but you feel safe amongst your teammates, amongst the staff, amongst the parents and things like that. And I think that for me is really, really important. And third of all, it's quite a difficult question. Yeah, it's quite a difficult question. But honestly, I think fun and do you know what it is? Patience. Patience and inclusivity is my third one. Is understanding the bigger picture, knowing that it's long term. It's not a one season.
It's not going to change overnight.
It's 10 years. You've got to be patient and you've got to trust in people and believe. Believe is my key word. Believe in the players. Believe in yourself. Believe in each other. Always believe.
I think I'm going to add. I think I agree with the support 100%. I think you've got to support everyone, and I don't think in a grassroots pilot it's just the players. I think it's the parents as well. Like if they can't make games for whatever reason, like they're struggling, like don't make it seem like it's the worst thing in the world. Like it's fine, you can't make it. Other things happen. It doesn't matter. And definitely that enjoyment side. But I'm going to add another one and say competitive. Because I think the competitive side is really, really important, not just for football, because obviously I just think, not just in football, but you will be in the future competing for jobs, competing for places at universities, competing for places, promotions, whatever it might be. You've got to have that competitive element, and it's really important everywhere, because if you're not really competitive and you're happy to just let it go, and obviously there's things you want to, but I think competitive is definitely something that I would say is really important for me. And I've seen what happens and when you don't have that competitive element, and it takes away a lot. So support, competitive, I'd say, and I'm going to say, like, I don't know what word would summarise it, but players feel like they can contribute. So it's the ability for a player, like I've had players on the side before, go, oh, what if we tried this? What if we did this? What if we had a go at this? And I've turned around and gone, you know what? Yeah, you're going to go on. You're going to go and tell them. You go and do it. See what happens. Try it.
Maybe giving ownership.
Yeah. Ownership. Yeah.
Ownership.
Definitely.
100%. Like that.
Yeah. I think we're going to have the same fun. Obviously, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have fun in grassroots. To be honest, I think King wouldn't have played at semi-pro.
Yeah, like, throw that in there.
Even like the top players, if they didn't enjoy it from the get-go, they wouldn't. They'd probably be sending, I don't know, the McDonald's cooking up my burger. But I think building an environment as well, I think that's massive because I think that just combines what we've all said, like support, safety, all of this. If you build that right environment, I think even if you have a team that might not be competing for the league, I think that environment, everyone's behind each other, everyone works for each other. I think that gains you. I know it's more fun, but even at professional level, that gains you probably 5-6 wins just by working hard, just by trusting the guy next to you. I think you have to build that environment. And third, I like Luke's one of competitive. I really like it. I was thinking of my third, and when Luke said it, I was like, yeah. Because, I mean, even when I go like golf or something, like I want to win. Bowling, I want to win. Even our little mini games when we're kicking it around before uni, I want to score the best goal, like my free kick at Hendon that went top corner, James.
Love it. Never forget it. Never forget it.
Never forget that one. But yeah, I think.
Oh, take it away.
So mine pretty much along the same lines is The first one is challenging. So are we actually looking at putting our players in scenarios? Also links to Luke's point. So what I would class as challenging would also be competitive. So it's competitive. You almost got to think outside the box of actually how you're going to go about the way you do something. You might try it differently. You might do the same thing. There's a lot of things around that. And it kind of works with holistic development when you look at players in general. If they're not being challenged, you're never going to kind of get any better, because you need to be comfortable in an uncomfortable position, if that makes sense. So there's also camaraderie. I think football is a brilliant way of getting people together to support each other in times of need, like now, or just other personal circumstances. I feel we need football because it brings people together and we can all support each other, whether it's coach to player, player to coach, parent to coach, all up and down the scale. There's a lot of stuff that we can support each other from, which helps, but also just enjoying it. Like, at the end of the day, like, it's also, you look at it and it's a 90-minute on a weekend. You're always going to get another opportunity to do something again, especially in football. Like, there's always another game around the corner. So, like, when people stress, I'm like, no. And I know people say it's just a game. And you know what? It is. It's not the be and end all. At the end of the day, everyone's there to enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
You want to be competitive, but there is an element that it is a game. It's not a matter of life or death. You're not going to lose your job, especially at grassroots football. If it's the Premier League and you're looking like you could be losing United grand a week contract, then I would start to be stressing about it. But otherwise, it's just not worth the hassle, really. People should just enjoy it. There's plenty of other rubbish things going on in life, and I hate to be a pessimist. So many other things in life going on.
Carl, there we go.
That people can just just let it be. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
what
like
is you're not going to get sold and we're not going to get sacked.
Yeah.
Like, that's
precisely, mate.
No pressure. Just play fearless.
You
Can you go for it?
Yeah. So you boys have covered a lot of points, which is good. But I've got two on here as well that haven't been mentioned. For me, transparency. I think there's got to be a level of transparency within your group, whether that's to the parents of the players, whether that's to your players, and and your players to you as well, because you have to build that level of trust and that support system where you can go and speak to each other about anything to do with football. You need to be able to go and speak. You don't want a situation where you're the coach of a team and your players are too sort of scared to come and ask you something, or you want to make sure that you're all transparent enough to be able to go and be honest with each other. You want to be upfront. You want to be honest with, and mostly at a younger age it comes with parents. Mostly with parents at a younger age group, but when they seem to get a bit older, it seems to, and they seem to hit the age of puberty and going into secondary school, and they get the ump and stuff like that, and you need to explain these things to them and stuff like that. But you've got to be honest about certain decisions or certain things you're trying to do and certain things you're trying to get across. The other thing for me is consistency. I think consistency is key, because at the end of the day, player development is, if you've got a staggered player development, the incline isn't going to be very good. If anything, it might decline. You want that level of consistency to be able to get that incline that's steady enough to make sure that they're developing at a rate that suits them at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, suits everyone else. I think it's got to suit the group. It's not an individual game, football, unfortunately, and I think you have to progress together. And I think it's your duty as a coach to make sure that happens, to make sure that players try and progress and develop together. And yeah, I think consistency plays a big role in that. But like you say, all of these points are are very good, because you get people that fall away from the game when they get to a certain age, and that's because stuff like these are missing. There's certain something that is missing in some of these points, and that's why we lose a lot of good players or a lot of good coaches in the game.
100%. Thank you today, boys. I think that was very enjoyable. I think one thing we'll try to do, is keep things relevant and leave you with a thought or a quote. And today, I'd like to share something that Harry Kane said after the semi-final of the Euros. He said last night in his post-match interview, everyone understands that they've got a chance to make an impact. He said, you might get 5 minutes, you might get 1 minute, but you can make an impact and you could be the player that wins us the Euros. And I think that's really important to understand at grassroots as well, is that everybody can have their impact. It might not always look the same, and you might not always have the same path to get there, but every single person, not just players, everyone can have their impact and make something a success. But thank you very much. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.